when there is no more room in hell.
Well, sometimes that is better.
The dead will walk the earth.
Hey guys. All right, guys. Welcome to episode 6, Shambling Horror Podcast. I was gonna say survival horror podcast. Don't I wish? Don't I wish I could get that name? But yeah, episode 6, guys. Today we're going over Return to the Living Dead. It's been a little light on the news as far as like survival horror stuff recently. There's like a bunch of cool fan projects going on, but there's nothing other than like maybe the big ones, maybe that Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that we won't talk about on this podcast because it sucks. But today we're going over my absolute favorite zombie movie ever. Very closely followed by 28 Days Later. But yeah. So today we're going over Return of the Living Dead. Absolute like cult classic movie. One of the best horror movies ever. I mean that when I say it, not just because I'm a fanboy. It's also really funny because it has a ton of really like talented actors in it who didn't necessarily do a lot of like really famous other work, which is funny. But the crazy thing is like the director is probably like one of the most famous writers like in Hollywood, like horror movies. Like I'll go over, if you don't know who he is, I'll go over that. Dan O'Bannon is like an absolute, like, was a juggernaut. But yeah, Return of the Living Dead. I'm going to go over the movie. There's going to be spoilers if you haven't seen it. It came out in 1985. So, like, I don't know what to tell y'all. But basically what you have with Return of the Living Dead is you have some guys who work in a warehouse, and there's some guys that work in a warehouse, and their boss explains to them that they basically spoof Night of the Living Dead. He explains to them the plot of Night of the Living Dead in the beginning of the movie, how they had like a chemical that leaked in a basement in a hospital in Pittsburgh that like made the dead start coming to life and like all this like really funny shit. And they're like, what happened to the chemical? And he's like, it's in the basement of this building. And they told me not to tell anybody, right? So they're like, no way, dude. So they go down there and there actually is a canister and there actually like is a body in that canister. And they're like dusting it off. He like bangs it and the gas comes out and they pass out. That's kind of where we start. And that's kind of how this gets started. So what happens is they wake up, right? And they wake up and it's like a factory, or not a factory, but it's a warehouse, not a factory, it's a warehouse. And they store all kind of stuff there, like medical supplies. And all of the cadavers and like stuff start coming to life. And they freak out. And they have to, like, one of the bodies they use, they store for medical purposes, like medical storage, comes to life, and they have to dismember it. So then you end up in this situation where they have this, like, dismembered body that's still moving around, and they have to get rid of it. So they take it to their friend who runs the graveyard across the street because he has a mortuary, and he has a, like incinerator for the bodies. So they take it over there and, they basically tell the guy who runs the mortuary, like, hey, we really need you to, like dispose of this body. And he's like freaking out. Dude's like freaking out. He's like, what? Well, the body's like moving around. I think he jokes and says like, was this a bunch of rats or something? So they dispose of the body in that incinerator, but what happens is the gas ends up in the air. Like when they burn the body, the gases from the incinerator go into the air and it rains and it essentially infects the entire cemetery. So then all those bodies start standing up. And so during all that time, you have some friends of, I want to say, in the girlfriend of Freddy, one of the main characters, the guy from the factory, or not the factory, from the warehouse, his girlfriend and all his like punk friends end up, you can see him on the poster here. They end up going to party in the cemetery. It's a bunch of like drunk like punk kids, right? So they go to the party in the cemetery, and they're in the cemetery when all these zombies come to life. It leads to one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie. The one chick, was it Trash? I think it was Linnea Quigley. Yeah, it was Linnea Quigley. It was Trash. So she starts taking off her clothes and dancing around in the cemetery. And jokingly, right before that scene, says she wants to, hey, what up, Atlas? Says she wants to be eaten alive by old men. And then she gets eaten alive by old men in the cemetery. It's actually kind of crazy. So they flee into the mortuary. And the movie settles in a bit. You basically have this like campy movie where they're like in the mortuary. And what happens is they're in the mortuary trying to figure out this whole situation and like call for help. And they get a call out. And what happens is the cops show up, and the cops immediately get swarmed by zombies. And then the zombie leans in and grabs them. It's the funniest scene that he grabs in and he goes, "Send more cops." And so then the paramedics show up, or the paramedics show up or the cops show up. I think the paramedics show up first, and they kill the paramedics. Yeah, dude, they kill the paramedics, and they're like, "Send more paramedics." And anytime somebody shows up, they get swamped by zombies. They even have like a, how do I say this is politically correct? Like a short person zombie. I don't know how to say this. Like a extra short person zombie. I don't know how to say that politically correct, so I'm gonna be careful. But yeah, it's ridiculous. That movie's so funny. If you watch that, if or when you watch Return of the Living Dead, if you watch, you can like pick out like really funny little like cameos and stuff. You end up, they end up in a mortuary, and their two friends, Freddy and not Don Kafka, it was the other guy. Freddy and Frank. Freddy and Frank. James Karen, man, he's such a good actor. Freddy and Frank, basically, these paramedics make it up into the building. They make it into the building, and you end up with like the best scene in the movie where they're infected. They don't know this, but that gas infected them, and they're like slowly but surely starting to turn. And the paramedic takes their vitals, and he's like, "This is strange. Your pupils are your pupils are like fully dilated, and your blood pressure 0/0." He's like, "You're dead." He's like, "You're dead." And they're like, "What do you mean we're dead?" He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like freaking out. They end up infected in the building. They end up infected in the building. And he's like trying to chase his girlfriend down. One of the creepiest scenes in the movie is one of the zombies ends up biting a dude like through the window, and they drag it inside, and they strap it to a table, and they ask that zombie, they said, "Hey." They start asking it questions, then they're like, "What do you want?" And it's like, "Brains." And they're like, "Well, why do you want brains?" And they're like, "Because it's painful to be alive." And it's like actually like naked, like with like zombie titties hanging out, like all this like creepy shit. I almost glossed over. I forgot to tell you guys about this. So, there is a part in the movie, I almost glossed this over, where you get one of the most famous zombies ever. Pretty sure the medical term for that thing you're trying to say, but avoid saying is dwarfism. Okay, perfect. I didn't know what it was called. So yes, you have people who suffer from dwarfism as zombies in the movie, which is kind of cool. But you have probably one of the most famous zombies ever, who I have tattooed right here on this shoulder. He is tattooed on this shoulder. It's the zombie that was in the canister in the beginning. They flee into the basement of the factory, and that zombie grabs one of the punk dudes by the top of the head and just peels the top of his head off. And he's like, brains. And they smash him in the side of the head with like a shovel. And he's like, more brains. Blah. And they call him the Tar Man because he's all like crazy looking. Here, I'll pull a picture of him up. Yeah, I have that tattoo. I have a tattoo of the Tar Man from Return of the Living Dead on my arm. But yeah, you see he's like super creepy dude. It looks like a fucking pirate, actually. I always thought he looked like a pirate. But yeah, so I almost glossed that over. But basically, they end up, their friend comes back, their friend Trash comes back as a zombie. Like a super like smart zombie. And starts like, she like becomes the leader of the like regular zombies or whatever. And so basically the way the movie wraps up, you have, they get a hold of the military and they tell the military like, hey, we need help. Like this chemical that we were storing for you released. So they essentially decide to like destroy the whole fucking town. The end of the movie, they're sitting around and you hear beep, and they're like, God damn it. It just, and the whole town blows up basically. But then, or that whole like area blows up. But then at the very end of the movie, because of all that fire and all that shit, the gas gets into the atmosphere again. And like reinfects everything. So like that's how it ends. So couple things. So obviously this is like my first, or not my first, well, it was one of my, I guess like real like first and like always will be one of my favorite zombie movies. But this was directed by Dan O'Bannon, and if you don't know who that is, I will pull this up. So he wrote the screenplay for Alien. This guy, check this out. This guy is an absolute legend. So look at this. He did like work on Star Wars. He wrote Alien. That was his script. Alien. Check this out. He wrote Alien. He did Dead and Buried also, which is really good. Although it says it's funny because he claims he didn't. He did Heavy Metal. Well, one of the stories in Heavy Metal. Heavy Metal, if you haven't seen it, by the way, is a fucking classic. Blue Thunder, which I never saw. Maybe I should go back and watch that. He did Return of the Living Dead. He did Life Force, which is another like really cool like horror movie. Invaders from Mars, I've never seen. He did Total Recall. He was the writer for Total Recall. I mean, yeah, this guy like he also. I will say this. He also did Screamers, which is a fantastic movie. Yeah, dude, if you have not seen Screamers, I highly, 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 highly recommend Screamers. That movie is so good. It's basically like this, crazy movie where these people are on this, like this other planet or whatever. I don't remember why. I think they're like a mining company. It's like a mining company, and they have all these robots, and the robots end up becoming like self-aware, almost like a Terminator situation, like where there's like a singularity, and they basically they like, I want to say they were weapons they were using to fight each other. Well, the robots end up not only killing all the humans on the planet, they end up killing all the humans on the planet, but they also start like using them like to make like lifelike looking versions of humans, and like they're using the robots are using their parts for like manufacturing other robots, and it's like really fucking crazy. That Screamers is so good. It also has the guy I think that played RoboCop. It's one of the Peter Weller. It's one of the only movies I've ever seen with him in it that wasn't RoboCop. It has Jennifer Rubin was in it too. I forgot that. But yeah, it has Peter Weller in it. The guy who played RoboCop, and he's fantastic. I highly recommend Screamers if you haven't seen it. But yeah, he did Bleeders. Bleeders is another good one. Yeah, like these are all like really cool movies, man. One of my favorites is Fortress, which Christopher Lambert. I'm not sure I've ever seen that. I like Christopher Lambert though. Highlander is the shit. But so we were talking about Return of the Living Dead. We were talking about Return of the Living Dead on the podcast tonight. So Dan O'Bannon is an absolute powerhouse as far as like a horror writer. Like in Hollywood, he's probably like one of the best ever. I mean, like his work speaks for itself. But what's interesting about Return of the Living Dead is they also not only did they have full frontal nudity, all of it, puss, titties, all of it. Not only did they have full frontal nudity, but they also introduced the idea of the running zombie like 30 years before anybody else did. They introduced the running zombies like 30 years before anybody else did. This came out in 1985. At one point in the movie, you literally have a shot of all of the zombies like literally running, like hauling ass. And I could be wrong. Maybe other than Omega Man, but Omega Man like technically was vampires. They weren't zombies. I cannot think, and there probably is like some obscure film or something I'm missing, but I cannot think of a movie before 1985 that did an actual like sprinting, hauling ass, like running zombie. I can't think of one. There might be one, but I can't think of it. Maybe Night of the Comet. I don't remember when Night of the Comet came out. I don't think that came out till later. No, actually, I am wrong. Night of the Comet came out in 1984, and this had running zombies in it. So, I mean, technically, like, whatever, I guess. But another good one, by the way, Night of the Comet, if you haven't seen it, it's a really, 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 really cool zombie movie, and it's really hard to get, at least on VHS. They don't make them anymore. But, yeah, guys, Return of the Living Dead, absolute great movie. Spawned like a bunch of sequels. The second one was cool. It was in like a neighborhood. Second one was cool. It was in like a neighborhood. Third one wasn't that great. Then they did the fourth one, which, hold on, that was Necropolis. So the third one was cool. The third one was the one with the lady who like had to cut herself. She had like pain. She got infected and died. That really hot lady, and she had to like inflict pain on herself, and she eats that dude at the damn like convenience store, the gas station. But yeah. The third one is like probably the last good one. The last two weren't very good, Necropolis and Rave to the Grave. But you know, I mean, the first three are like, that's kind of, those are like the best, I think, in the series. After that, it got a little schlocky. I like those kind of campy, like B horror movies, obviously. But those last two Return of the Living Dead movies were not very good. Question: how many Resident Evil movies were good in your opinion? All right. Wait. So the live action movies or the animated movies? Because there's a big distinction between the two. Okay, live action movies, Resident Evil movies. So I like the first one. So there's one. I like the first one, although it didn't age well, but I do like it. The first Resident Evil movie did not age well. None of them really did, but I like it a lot. The soundtrack is fucking killer too. I like the first one. I don't like the second one. I like the third one, and I don't like any of the other ones. So let me see. So I like the first one. I'll pull them up a list so you guys can see them. So I like the first one. Right? First one's good. Second one sucks. Third one was cool. That was one in the desert. The third one's cool. I don't like Afterlife. I don't really like any of the ones after that. So I like the first one and the third one. And I don't really like any of the ones after that. These were really bad. Retribution and Final Chapter were really bad. And then I do like Welcome to Raccoon City. So I like 3 out of the, 7 movies? 3 out of the 7 is pretty bad ratio. Yeah, I like the first Resident Evil, I like the third Resident Evil, and I liked Raccoon City, but it wasn't great. Like I said, it wasn't a good movie. I liked it, but it wasn't good. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Resident Evil movies. But yeah, guys, that'll wrap it up for us for the podcast. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. Shambling Hard Podcast episode 6. You guys can find this everywhere. YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, all of the places. Definitely give us a 5-star review of your faces if you do that. And don't forget, you can catch us on the Twitch channel. It's Garish Zod on Twitch. And that'll do it for us. I will catch you guys in the next one, guys. Peace.